Long before humans ever built a city, wrote a law, or worried about a morning commute, we had already discovered our planet's most controversial companion. Think about the sheer improbability of it. Early humans are wandering across prehistoric landscapes, trying to figure out which plants will nourish them, which ones will cure an infection, and which ones will immediately end their lives. Somewhere in the vast expanse of prehistoric East Asia, our ancestors crossed paths with cannabis, and instead of clearing it out as a nuisance, they looked at it, harvested it, and realized they had stumbled onto something extraordinary. To an ancient community trying to survive the elements, this wasn't just a weed, it was a multi-tool. You could peel the tough outer stalks to spin durable ropes for hunting nets, secure heavy timber for shelters, and rig primitive transport sleds. You could weave the inner fibers into surprisingly comfortable clothing to ward off the winter chill, pressing the oil-rich seeds for dense nutritional food, or steep the leaves and resin for potent ancient remedies. It was the ultimate biological Swiss Army knife, growing straight out of the dirt, providing early populations with a reliable resource long before modern manufacturing ever existed. As human civilization began to cluster into permanent settlements and trade routes started cutting across continents, the plant traveled right along with us. Merchants moving along the early paths of the Silk Road carried more than just silk, jade, and spices in their packs. They carried agricultural seeds and medicinal herbs that local communities eagerly integrated into their regional practices. By around 500 BCE, high up in the freezing, windswept passes of the Pamir Mountains, at a site known as the Gironal Cemetery, communities were already utilizing specialized wooden braziers to burn potent strains of the plant during sacred gatherings. They weren't just tossing random brush into a fire. They were carefully selecting rich, resinous material, placing it over superheated stones, and filling the cold mountain air with thick plumes of smoke during communal ceremonies. These early high-altitude rituals demonstrated an advanced understanding of thermal vaporization, proving that our ancestors knew precisely how to extract and consume the plant's active compounds long before written science could explain the mechanics. Down in the Mediterranean and the Near East, reports of these ancient practices began filtering back to historians like Herodotus. While traveling through Central Asia, he documented nomadic tribes constructing small enclosed felt tents, throwing the plant onto red-hot stones inside, and emerging from the vapor bath utterly transformed. For centuries, modern academics assumed these accounts were mere historical exaggeration, until archaeologists uncovered permafrost-sealed Scythian tombs in Siberia containing the exact tent frames, stones, and seeds described in ancient texts. Further discoveries in the Caucasus Mountains revealed solid gold cups holding ancient chemical residues, showing that elite warriors blended sacred rituals with extraordinary craftsmanship. The deeper researchers look into human antiquity, and the further we trace these historical threads, the stranger and more intrinsic the connection becomes. And the reason for this deep historical bond isn't just cultural, it is fundamentally biological. Long before anyone recorded history on parchment, human nervous systems were already hardwired for this exact interaction. Our bodies naturally manufacture a specialized lipid neurotransmitter called Anandamide, a molecule named directly after the Sanskrit word for bliss. When plant compounds enter the human system, they don't force a foreign reaction. Instead, they fit precisely into receptors our bodies already possess, like a spare key sliding into a pre-existing lock. That built-in chemical bridge explains why cultures across the ancient world elevated the plant from a utility crop to something deeply spiritual and medicinal. In ancient India, references embedded within sacred texts like the Atharva Veda celebrated it among the most revered botanical elements. Mythology linked it directly to divine forces, such as the deity Shiva, where traditional milk and leaf mixtures became a cornerstone of seasonal festivals, a tradition that local communities have continued to practice for thousands of years. Yet, as human societies grew more complex, the tension between the plant and the state began to rise. In ancient China, legendary physicians like Hua Tuo utilized herbal wine infusions to dull pain during complex surgical procedures centuries before modern anesthesia existed. But operating at the bleeding edge of science carried a heavy price. When powerful warlords demanded exclusive medical servitude and healers resisted, the state moved swiftly to crush what it could not control, driving profound discoveries into silence and wiping revolutionary medical formulas from the historical record. Centuries later, during the Age of Exploration, hemp fibers formed the hidden backbone of maritime expansion. Merchant vessels and naval warships alike depended entirely on durable hemp rigging, heavy tow lines, and thick canvas sails to conquer uncharted oceans. Without this single crop, global navigation and colonial trade networks would have literally unraveled at sea. But the geopolitical journey of the plant did not stop at the edge of the colonial frontier. It continued to evolve right into the fabric of developing nations. As new territories expanded across the Americas, the absolute necessity of hemp cultivation led legislative bodies to mandate its growth by law. Farmers who preferred more immediately lucrative cash crops found themselves legally bound to sow the resilient plant because colonial infrastructures literally could not function without its fibers for canvas, cordage, and caulking. Decades slipped into centuries, transforming a once ubiquitous agricultural staple into an invisible engine of everyday commerce. Ships sailed, textiles were spun, medicines were brewed, and local markets thrived on the quiet reliability of a crop that had accompanied human migration since the dawn of agriculture. Yet the institutional anxieties that had plagued ancient healers like Hua Tuo eventually found new life in the modern political machinery of the 20th century. Bureaucratic agencies, driven by shifting cultural panics and targeted administrative agendas, began systematically rewriting the legal status of botanical substances that had safely existed alongside civilization for millennia. Archives, legislative hearings, and scientific testimonies were selectively curated or ignored to fit a narrative of criminalization, turning a 12,000-year-old botanical companion into a flashpoint of political control. Independent judges and medical researchers who pushed back against these sweeping prohibitions found their empirical evidence sidelined in favor of optics and regulatory expansion. Despite generations of legislative bans, tax acts, and political campaigns, the deep evolutionary alignment between human biology and the plant remains an immutable fact of our natural history. From ancient Himalayan shrines and Scythian burial mounds to the decks of wooden exploration vessels, the footprint of this versatile plant is permanently stamped into the record of human survival. From ancient nomadic tents and Himalayan burial mounds to imperial Chinese courts, sacred temples, and colonial trading ships, this single plant has mirrored the entire trajectory of human ambition, discovery, and institutional control. A 12,000-year companion to human civilization cannot simply be erased by modern paperwork or political shifts. Thank you for watching Animo Alchemy. Make sure to subscribe, and we will see you in the next mystery.